I went undefeated with an aggro deck that cost less than $50. Here's how I built it. I'm thinking of going down a similar fort pattern that I did with my first deck profile video of going Emerald and Amethyst, primarily because I think for any other aggro deck, the cards you need to be effective, like with Steel and Amber, tend to be quite expensive. While that's also true in Emerald, I think we can get away with missing out on some of those more crucial cards. I'm going to start off with the basis of just filling in good cards that I used in my previous deck profile, such as 4 copies of Olaf, 4 copies of Pascal. Olaf on its own I don't think is an amazing card, but when we pair it with Megara, the 2-drop that gives +2 attack, it can be really powerful for countering key meta threats like Simba, which sits at 3 health. I won't be adding any Befuddles, mainly because I think the card is sort of antithetical to an aggro playstyle. I'll also be missing out on the Maleficent, not just because it's $7, which is way too expensive for this budget deck, but also because I don't think it's very good without having Bodyguard in your list. Another card I've seen some players running is Ursula's Cauldron. I don't think it's a very good card to run in an aggro deck because it slows down the pace of your game too hard. Like, it can be tempting to want to be able to have more consistency and more draw, but really that's a sort of greed of value play that's only reserved for slower control and maybe mid-range decks. Cruella de Vil's a really solid card, but I think it's a bit too expensive for how effective the card is. I'd much rather spend that money on another 2-drop that's really effective, like Flynn Rider. Here we have Megara. Megara's really cheap and it fills out the 2-drop slot, plus it synergizes amazingly with Olaf. Yeah, I'm going to add 4 Maleficent for the draw, and I'm going to add 4 Rafiki because the 3/3 stat line with Rush is really good at controlling the board, which is amazing in the aggro mirror and even into some mid-range matchups. Rafiki's 3/3 is very good for trading into a Simba, and then you can take out their Lilo, much like Megara does with Olaf. Friends on the other side is just an amazing card. If we start running out of steam and playing out all our cards for tempo, we can hit Friends from the other side, maybe even sing it. While Cheshire Cat is expensive, it's also a really powerful card. I'm going to add 4 of it for now, but maybe look into cutting it later when we're needing to shave a few dollars. Iago's an interesting choice, but it sort of just feels like a worse Jasper, so in that case I am just going to add 4 copies of Jasper, which is amazing in the aggro mirror. Like, honestly, this card has won me so many games. I might add Peter Pan because it's really cheap, but honestly I don't think it's a very good card because it dies to 1 grab your sword, so I think we're going to skip it for now. Mother Knows Best is a great card. We're going to add 4 copies for now, but to be honest, I'm probably going to shave it down to 3 later like I did in my previous deck profile, because it's a bit clunky of a card for an uninkable that you can't play proactively. Normally in the 4-drop slot I would be running Hans, but $9 is way too expensive for us to stay within the $50 or so budget. I think it's $51. So instead we'll be adding 4 copies of Jetsam, which is a card I haven't used very often, so I'm excited to give it a go. The evasive is really strong. It only quests for 1, but I mean, at the end of the day, an evasive is evasive. It's a Pascal that doesn't die to grab your sword, essentially. Tinkerbell is a really strong card, and luckily it's super cheap too, so we're definitely going to be adding 4 copies of that to our deck. Next, to synergize with our Jetsam, and also because we need a 5-drop in place of Kuzco, because Kuzco is far too expensive, I'm going to add 4 copies of Flotsam. This way we have a 5-drop quest for 2 with evasive, which is actually pretty okay. Plus it gets Rush, which we might end up using, I'm not sure. Obviously, the best card in the Emerald deck is probably Kuzco. It's really sad we can't add it in, especially in an aggro list, but you know, this is a good budget starting line. If you do end up picking up some Kuzcos after this, definitely add it into your deck. We're gonna add 4 drops of Mad Hatter because it's a really strong card. It quests for free, and it's quite sticky because of the effect of your opponent needing to essentially give us +1 when they challenge us. We've got a bit of room left in the budget, and I think Genie is one of the strongest cards in green, so I definitely think we can afford 4 copies of Genie. I would like to add the full art card, but I think $180 per copy is probably a bit out of our budget. John Silver, also an amazing choice, especially in the aggro mirror. If you use this list as a starter, much like with the Kuzco, and you pick up a couple John Silvers, definitely consider adding them to your list. So in place of John Silver, I'm going to be running Mother Gothel. It's slightly worse because it doesn't have an on-play effect, and the effect doesn't persist after it's been challenged and banished, but I think we can afford to fit in maybe 2 or 3 copies. Okay, so we're at 62 cards. Now's a good time to look at optimizing our numbers. We're slightly above budget at $52.50. So I believe that the price cap is $51. We're going to try and get it below $50 because I think that's a cooler number, but keep in mind all 3 Lorcana starter decks at MSRP is $51. For the reasons I stated earlier, I'm going to be cutting Mother's Knows Best to free because we have too many uninkable cards and it's a reactive card, so we don't want to run too many of them. It looks like to stay within budget, I'm going to have to cut 1 Cheshire Cat and then even a Flynn Rider to save some money, and we can replace the Flynn with a one of Cruella de Vil. If you've got the extra bucks and you're not under an arbitrary deck building restriction like I am, then I would recommend keeping the ratios as they were. Alright, and there's the +1 Cruella. So there you have it. We have a budget aggro Emerald Amethyst deck, which is well within the $51 budget, coming in at a total of $48.42. So let's take this into a game on Pixelborn and see how it performs. Alright, here we go, guys. We're going into our first game. Here are the cards we've been drawn. Let's do the mulligan. I think we always mulligan Genie. It's uninkable. It's a 6 cost. We want to see that later in the game. Got a pretty solid curve here. I mean, Pascal, Megara's not great after Pascal, but you know, at the end of the day, she's still a 2-drop. And we are going second, so there's a chance we could trade Pascal into something favorably. Friends on the other side, Jasper, Mad Hatter. I mean, the Mad Hatter's inkable, so I might just keep it to ink, because we still have our 1, 2, 3, 4. Rafiki's a great pickup there. But yeah, so I think off the bat, we're inking the Mad Hatter, and then we're playing out the Pascal. Our opponent didn't play anything turn 1, so we've got some good tempo on them at least. We are going to take out off Pascal straight away with a fire of the cannons. They respect the evasive 1-drop. They know I'm just going to be able to quest every turn, so we forced them to use removal. Unfortunately, it was quite efficient removal, so I think they still have a bit of the tempo advantage there. I don't know how much we actually benefit from playing Megara on its own here, so I am tempted to just ink the Megara and wait till turn 3. Not sure if that's the correct move in an aggro matchup, but I want to keep all of these cards. I want to keep Friends on the other side. I mean, do I need 2 Friends on the other side? That's really the question. I mean, Megara does only quest for 1, and they don't have anything out on the board, and anything they do play on the board is likely to have 3 or more health, and Megara would just die to a Tinkerbell or grab your swords anyway. So I think I'm going to make the crazy move of actually inking Megara, and then passing till 3. Okay, our opponent has gone and played a Cheshire Cat. We can perfectly counter this play by just playing a Jasper. It looks like we're playing an Emerald Steel list, so I think we should have the tempo advantage on them. Yeah, so I'm gonna ink 1 Friends on the other side and then play a Jasper. That way we can prevent their Cheshire Cat from questing. If we'd played the Rafiki, it would have been a trade 1-for-1, which I wouldn't have been a massive fan of. Really, with the Rafiki, you either want to take out a key threat, or you want to try and swing the tempo back in some way. And ideally, the Rafiki stays on the board alive. Like, here we go, Hans is a much better choice for Rafiki to swing into. Yeah, I think we want to keep the Friends on the other side here, so I'm going to ink the Jetson. Having 3 Genies in hand is a massive brick, but I think we're still just about okay. So we're going to trade the Rafiki. Oh, I'm an idiot. I can't actually trade into the Hans yet, so I think instead we're going to trade the Rafiki into the Cheshire Cat, except that Rafiki dies, and then quest, preventing Hans from questing next turn. It's not the most efficient use of our removal, but I think this matchup is quite tempo based, so we want to try and preserve it as much as we can, and not let our opponent get ahead on lore too much. Another fire of the cannons used really efficiently to maintain tempo for our opponent. I think our best move here is probably just to ink the Friends on the other side, and then play the Rafiki to trade the Hans, which again isn't great because we're using Rafiki really inefficiently, but the hope is that we can draw into an inkable card and then swing the tempo back into our favor with a Genie on turn 6. Oh, they just played Kuzco. We're not going to be able to Genie the Kuzco. Let's hope we draw an inkable card anyway so we can get some form of just tempo, really. It would be great if we maybe went into a Mother Gothel here, which would prevent Kuzco from questing. John Silver, you know what, this is actually the one scenario where Mother Gothel is better than John Silver. And there we go, we did hit the Jetsam as an inkable card, so now we can start playing out our Genies. There's not really much we can do about the Kuzco, so I think our goal is to just going to be remove any other threats that they play. If they play a second Kuzco, then we might be screwed, honestly. Okay, good. Luckily, they didn't have a second Kuzco, and they concede! That's a win! I don't know. Why did they concede? No, I think we're going to have to go into another game because that game is just way too fast to really show off this deck. Alright, here we are guys, into game 2. Here are the 7 cards we've been drawn. We're definitely going to mulligan the Genie and the Flotsam because they're uninkable and high cost. And honestly, we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4 curve, so I think we keep everything else. I'm pretty happy with our hand here. Looks like we're up against an Amber deck. Could be an Amber Steel control deck, judging by that aerial. We always ink for Mother Gothel here because they're, you know, too high cost for us to get immediate impact from them. Pascal and Flynn is a really strong opener to place a lot of tempo. Oh, they're an Amber Sapphire deck, so probably a mid-range Princesses list. Ooh, that Simba is really where we want to be seeing cards like Megara to trade into it. So I think because of a Simba, Flynn's not very efficient to play. So we could ink for Flynn and then play a Pascal and then just go based off of evasives. They have shown that they're Sapphire through their inked cards, which means they don't have Grab Your Sword, so evasives are really strong in this matchup. Yeah, I think in that case, we're gonna ink for Flynn and play the Pascal and then just keep questing in their face. Against a deck like mid-range Princesses, you really want to avoid cards that can be traded into easily, so evasives are a perfect counter to a mid-range deck, especially when I don't believe they can run any evasives themselves with Amber and Sapphire. Our next choice is pretty interesting. I don't think we need the Maleficent because we have enough inkable cards in a curve, so I think we're just going to go for Cheshire for the tempo. So let's ink Olaf, play Cheshire, and then quest in their face. Especially in the ramp matchup where our opponent's able to get resources quicker than we are, it's really important to push the tempo and push them out of the game. A really card for them to be able to sort of challenge us on that is the Maleficent that they just played. It's a free attack, 6 health, quest for free card, kind of insane. I think we should probably go for a Mother's Knows Best to keep the tempo maybe. And yeah, so we ink Mother's Knows Best, keep the tempo, or we just go for a Jetson. No, I think it's really important to get rid of that Maleficent though. This is tricky. This is really tricky. I think I don't know. Yeah, we really want to push tempo back in our favor, so let's ink for Maleficent, play Mother's Knows Best. On their Maleficent, even, and then we can just quest. Oh, and they just played the aerial to sing for the Let It Go. I forgot to say anything earlier, but last turn what they did was they traded the Simba then the Mickey Mouse into our Cheshire to remove it. And now it looks like they're looking for some more hard removal to get rid of our Pascals. If they use a Let It Go on our Pascal, that would be pretty good value, honestly. So I think because we know they have Let It Go in their hand, we have to go wide. So we're going to ink for Jetsam. And this is kind of risky in case we don't draw another inkable card for Genie next turn. But we can hopefully waste some of their removal here and just, yeah, go wide. Because they can't deal with a wide board. This should be good enough tempo to really apply some pressure on them. And they play the Be Our Guest. What are they going to pull? I can't remember if they have to reveal the card from Be Our Guest. I think they do, just to show that it's a monster. Yeah, okay, and they grab a Surfer Stitch, so they're looking for some draw to get some answers on the board, and even put down, you know, that free quest card to regain some tempo in the, you know, lore race questing game. I think with they're currently going for +6 lore. Okay, they did end up Let It Going our Cheshire, which is normally really good for us. Oh, it is actually amazing for us because that got us to the 6 lore that we needed. What do we get rid of though? Do we bounce the aerial to hand? No, because that'll let them grab another singer. I think our best option here is to play the Genie and bounce the Stitch back to their hand. Really just to stop them from catching up in us quest-wise. And Now we're just really going to race towards 20 lore as fast as we can to win the game. Having like a Kuzco in our deck here would be really great. We don't have that, but one thing we do have is Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter isn't as strong as Kuzco though, because it can be removed by spot removal like Hades and Let It Go. Yeah, our opponents just played the Stitch out again to draw some cards. Maybe they're hoping to draw into a Let It Go so that they can sing the Aerial and remove my Genie. It looks like they were able to hit the Let It Go, which is unfortunate for us. They're probably going to clear the Flynn now with a Simba. Yeah, this game's pretty close. We really need to draw into some of our higher questing cards now, like Mad Hatter to stay in the game, or even maybe just another Genie so we can reset the tempo. I mean, honestly, these Pascals have just been heavy lifting this entire game. They've stayed on the board since turn 1 and 2, questing every single turn. Ooh, this is interesting. I think we play the Maleficent here to try and draw into a card. We do draw into a card, and then I think we... Ooh, Pascal's really tempting to play, but we are one off being able to play Flotsam this turn, and we want to race to 20 as quick as we can and threaten lethal. So I think we have to ink for Pascal, play the Flotsam, and then we can quest for 2, which leaves us at 5 total lore, so we are threatening lethal next turn if they don't have spot removal like Hades or Let It Go. And this leaves us in a great situation, because even if they do clear our board, I don't think they'll be able to get there with get to 20 lore within 2 turns, so all it takes is for us to get a top deck if they clear maybe 1 or 2 units. And they conceded. There you go, guys. We beat mid-range princesses, Amber Sapphire, with a budget Emerald Amethyst deck that cost, what, $48?